I returned home after surgery and found my wife dying alone. Our son was on vacation in Spain and posted, "Finally, I deserve a week without my pathetic old folks." I grabbed my phone and made a call. 5 minutes later, the key stuck in the lock. My knee throbbed where they had cut through muscle and bone 3 days ago. And the simple act of turning metal in a slot took more effort than it should have. The door finally gave way, swinging inward to reveal darkness. No lights, no television murmur, just the kind of silence that makes your skin prickle. I stepped across the threshold, pausing to let my eyes adjust. Something felt wrong in a way I couldn't name yet. "Helen?" My voice sounded too loud in the stillness. "Chester." "Nothing." I moved through the living room, one hand trailing along the wall for balance, my cane tapping against hardwood I'd installed 30 years ago. The architect in me noticed details without trying. Curtains drawn at 2 in the afternoon. Mail piled on the whole table, a faint staleness in the air. "Helen, honey, I'm home." The bedroom door stood slightly ajar. I pushed it open and the smell hit me first. Stale sweat and something else. Something human and wrong. She lay in our bed, sheets twisted around her legs, head turned toward the window where afternoon light tried to penetrate heavy drapes. Her lips had a dried, cracked look. The water pitcher on the nightstand was bone dry, tipped on its side. "Helen." Her eyes opened slowly, like it cost her something. Recognition flickered, then something that looked like relief mixed with shame. "Simon." The word came out as barely more than breath. "You're back." I crossed the room, forgetting my knee, forgetting everything except the way she looked. Diminished, fragile, wrong. My wife of 42 years, reduced to this. What happened? "Where's Chester?" 3 days, she whispered. "He promised he'd come back." The words landed like stones in still water. I pulled the chair closer, sat down carefully, and took her hand. It felt like paper, dry and delicate. "When did he leave, Helen?" "Tuesday. I think Tuesday." Her eyes searched mine, looking for something I wasn't ready to give yet. "He said just 2 days. Quick trip. Had to get away for a bit." "He'd earned it," he said. "Tuesday. I'd gone into surgery Wednesday morning. Today was Friday." The math assembled itself in my head with architectural precision. "Did he leave you water?" "He brought the pitcher, filled it." "I remember that." She swallowed with visible effort. "I couldn't. The wheelchair's in the corner." "I couldn't reach." I looked. The wheelchair sat against the far wall, impossibly distant from the bed. Chester knew his mother couldn't walk unassisted. He'd positioned it there anyway. "I'm calling for help," I said, pulling out my phone. "Don't be angry with the boy." I didn't answer that. The dispatcher picked up on the second ring and I gave our address in the calm voice I'd perfected over 40 years of dealing with contractors and clients. My hand stayed steady. That would come later. The paramedics arrived in 14 minutes. I opened the door for 2 women who moved with practiced efficiency, asking questions while they worked. How long had she been without fluids? Did she have any medical conditions? Where was her caregiver? "My son," I said, watching them check Helen's vitals. "He was supposed to be here." They exchanged a look I'd seen before in other contexts. The kind of look that says everything without saying anything. She could have. The younger one started, then stopped. "We need to transport her." "I'll follow," I said. After they wheeled her out, I stood in the empty bedroom looking at the evidence. Unopened medication bottles lined up on the nightstand. A glass just out of reach. The wheelchair, deliberate in its distance. I checked Chester's room next. Clothes scattered across the floor, drawers yanked open, hangers empty. The passport that usually lived in his desk drawer was gone. I knew because I'd seen it there last week when I'd borrowed his printer. The front door opened as I came back down the hall. Mrs. Patterson from next door carrying a casserole dish wrapped in aluminum foil. "Simon, you're back. How's the knee? Have you seen Chester?" She blinked at the question, at something in my tone. "Tuesday morning early. He had big suitcases. Said something about finally getting a break." She smiled uncertainly. Looked happy. "Tuesday. Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine. Thank you for checking." I took the casserole and closed the door with careful control. In the kitchen, I found takeout containers in the trash. Chinese food. 1 meal's worth. Chester had eaten before he left sometime Tuesday morning. Fed himself, packed his bags, and walked out while his mother slept. My phone felt heavy in my pocket. I pulled it out, opened the browser, navigated to Chester's profile. The page loaded slowly, and for a moment, I almost hoped it wouldn't load at all. Then the images appeared. Bright sun, turquoise water, a cocktail glass, sweating condensation. Chester's grin, wide and carefree, sunglasses pushed up on his head. The location tag said Barcelona. The post was 2 hours old. I scrolled to the caption. Finally, a week without the pathetic old folks. The words sat there on the screen, pixeler arranged proof of something I'd maybe always known but never let myself see. My son, my only child, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike and help through college, who'd moved back home 5 years ago when his tech startup folded, who'd promised to help care for his mother while I recovered from surgery. Pathetic old folks. I took a screenshot, force of habit from years of documenting architectural plans and client agreements, evidence. Then I set the phone down on the kitchen table, face down, with the kind of precision that comes from not trusting what your hands might do if you're not careful. The house settled around me, quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator. Somewhere in Spain, Chester was drinking expensive drinks and laughing about his week of freedom. Here, his mother was in an ambulance being treated for dehydration that could have killed her. Could have. I said the words aloud, testing them. Could have killed her. The architect in me had always understood structures, load-bearing walls, the way a single point of failure could bring everything down. I'd spent my career making sure buildings didn't collapse, that foundations held firm, that people stayed safe inside walls I'd designed. Chester had wanted a break from the burden of caring. He'd wanted freedom from obligation, from the weight of elderly parents who slowed him down and reminded him of mortality and responsibility. I set the phone down carefully, very carefully. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The hospital coffee was terrible and cold by the time I got around to drinking both cups. I'd bought 2 that morning, one for Helen, one for me, but she'd been sleeping when I arrived, and the nurse said to let her rest. So I sat in the corridor near her room, watching morning light stream through tall windows, and drank both cups while they went from lukewarm to cold, bitter, like the clarity that had settled over me sometime around 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd spent the night in a chair beside Helen's bed, listening to machines beep and watching fluids drip through tubes into her arm. The doctor said she'd be fine, dehydrated, exhausted, early signs of bed sores, but fine. Another day and the outcome might have been different. Might have been. Around 8, Helen's eyes opened. She looked at me and I watched recognition move through confusion to understanding. She knew that I knew. The truth sat between us like a third person in the room. "You saw his post," she said. I didn't answer right away. There wasn't much to say. He didn't mean it. He's young, frustrated. Where she swallowed and I poured fresh water into her cup, held it while she sipped. "We're difficult. You almost died, Helen. But I didn't. And he's still our son. Promise me you won't rest," I said, squeezing her hand. "Please, just rest." She studied my face, looking for something. Whatever she found there made her close her eyes again. I stayed another hour, then told the nurse I'd be back later. The drive home took 20 minutes. My knee complained as I worked the pedals, but the pain felt distant, manageable. Everything felt manageable now, in a way it hadn't 12 hours ago. I pulled into the driveway and noticed Chester's car was still in the garage. Of course, he'd taken an Uber to the airport. Efficient. The kind of planning that goes into a successful escape. Inside, the house looked different in daylight. I'd been too focused on finding Helen yesterday to notice smaller details. Now, I saw them. A coffee mug in the sink, Chester's laptop charger still plugged into the kitchen outlet, his favorite hoodie draped over a chair, and then I heard the refrigerator close. I turned. A woman stood in my kitchen holding a yogurt and one of Helen's good silver spoons, mid-30s, dark hair, wearing one of Chester's old college sweatshirts like it belonged to her. "Oh," she said, not looking particularly surprised. "You're back, Helen." "Okay." It took me a moment to place her. Stephanie, Chester's girlfriend. No, fiancée now, wasn't it? He had mentioned her a few times, usually when he needed money for dinner or concert tickets. "Why are you in my house?" She raised an eyebrow, spooning yogurt into her mouth with Helen's silver. "Chester's house. Technically, eventually." She laughed, a short sound without much humor. "I'm staying in the guest room. He said it was fine. He doesn't own this house yet." She set the yogurt down, leaned against the counter like she'd done it 1,000 times. "But we both know he will. Old people don't live forever." The words hung in the air between us. I'd spent 40 years negotiating with contractors, dealing with difficult clients, managing conflicts with the kind of calm professionalism that kept projects on schedule. That training kicked in now, smoothing my voice into something flat and even. "Get out. Make me." She smiled. And it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Oh, wait. You can't. Chester lives here. I'm his guest. This is my house. I built it. I designed every corner. And Chester's your only child, heir, sole beneficiary. He told me all about the will. She examined her nails casual. It's sweet, really. You leaving everything to family. Things change. Not wills, not at your age. Too complicated. Too expensive. She picked up the yogurt again. Besides, Chester said, you're old school. You'd never cut off your own son. I moved carefully toward the study, each step measured. You'd be surprised what I can do. Where are you going? My study. Feel free to let yourself out. Behind me, I heard her laugh again. Heard the refrigerator open and close. Heard her moving through my house like she had every right, like it was already hers. In the study, I closed the door and stood for a moment, letting my breathing settle. The safe was behind the bookshelf, hidden in a cavity I designed into the wall when I had built this place. Only Helen and I knew about it. The combination was our wedding date, which Chester had never bothered to remember. The door swung open with a quiet click. Inside, among other documents, was the will. I'd drawn it up 15 years ago when Chester graduated college and we'd still believed he'd make something of himself. Everything split between Helen and Chester, with Chester getting the house when we were both gone. I pulled it out, carried it to the desk, laid it flat under the green shaded lamp. The paper looked official and permanent. All those legal words arranging our lives into neat categories and clauses. Sole beneficiary. I left the will on the desk and pulled out my phone. Angela Ray had been my attorney for 20 years, handling everything from business contracts to estate planning. Her number was in my contacts under legal. She answered on the third ring. Simon, is everything all right? It's late. I glanced at the clock. 7:30. Not late, but later than I usually called. I need to change my will completely. Remove my son. Silence on the other end. The kind that means someone's recalculating. That's significant. Can this wait until normal business hours? No. Tomorrow morning, first appointment. This is urgent. Another pause. When Angela spoke again, her voice had shifted into a different register. The one she used for serious legal matters. Understood. 9 a.m. my office. Bring current documents and identification. I'll be there. Simon, she said, and something in her tone made me stop. These kinds of changes, are you certain? I've never been more certain of anything. After I hung up, I sat in the darkness of my study, the will still on the desk in front of me, Stephanie's movements audible somewhere in my house. The document represented 40 years of building something, of believing family meant protection and continuity. Chester had been the foundation of that belief. Foundations could be rebuilt. I'd done it before with buildings that needed saving. You exposed the damage, cut away what was rotten, and poured new concrete. By this time tomorrow, that piece of paper would mean nothing. And Chester, he'd finally gotten his break. Permanent. Angela Ray's waiting room smelled like leather and old money. I sat in one of those expensive chairs that made you feel important, or at least like your problems were worth expensive solutions. Through the glass door, I could see Angela's mahogany desk. The walls lined with legal texts that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. I'd arrived 15 minutes early. The manila envelope on my lap contained everything. Screenshots printed in color. Helen's hospital discharge summary. The old will with Chester's name highlighted as sole beneficiary. My knee throbbed. A dull reminder of surgery that felt like it had happened months ago instead of days. The receptionist smiled at me over her computer. She's ready for you, Mr. Watkins. Angela's office was exactly what I'd expected. Professional, efficient, the kind of space where serious things got done. She stood when I entered, shook my hand with the right amount of firmness. Simon, please sit. She gestured to a chair across from her desk. Tell me exactly what happened. Start from when you got home. I arranged the documents on her desk in chronological order. Timeline first, medical records second, social media evidence last. The architect in me couldn't help but organize things logically, even when the content made my stomach turn. I found my wife dying. My son was in Barcelona posting vacation photos. Angela picked up the printed screenshots, studied them with the neutral expression, lawyers perfect over years of hearing terrible things. These are remarkably callous. That's my son or who he's become. I tapped the hospital summary. She was alone for 3 days. No water, no medication. Could have died but didn't. No, thanks to Chester. Angela set the papers down, folded her hands on the desk. You want him removed from your will? I can do that. But first, let me show you something better. For the next hour, she walked me through Florida estate law. Simple will changes, she explained. Invited contests after death. Unhappy heirs could tie up estates in probate for years, especially if they claimed undue influence or mental incompetence. What's the difference between changing the will and creating this trust you're describing? A will can be contested for years. A trust is immediate, irrevocable in effect. She pulled a legal pad closer, sketched a simple diagram. You transfer assets now, control them while you're alive, designate beneficiaries who receive everything automatically upon death. No probate, no contest period. He can't fight what's already done. I took notes, treating this like a construction project. Load-bearing decisions, structural integrity, long-term stability. Your total estate, she consulted the documents I brought. Approximately 1.2 million. You're transferring everything to the MS Foundation. Everything, the house I designed, every dollar I saved. Chester gets nothing. Angela leaned back and for the first time her professional mask cracked slightly. Simon, I have to ask. Is there any chance you'll reconcile? This is permanent in effect, even if legally revocable. He left his mother to die alone. That's permanent, too. She nodded slowly. Understood. Let's proceed. The document preparation took until late afternoon. Angela had templates, but each clause needed customization. Asset descriptions, trustee designations, beneficiary details. I read every paragraph before initiating. Used my architectural drafting pen, the one I'd used to sign the final plans for the house 40 years ago. How long does this take? We can have documents ready today, notarized tomorrow, effective immediately. Do it. The next morning, I drove to Milton Willis's notary office across town. Milton was older than me, retired from a long career in real estate law, and I'd worked with him on several architectural projects decades back. Simon. He shook my hand carefully, eyeing my cane. Heard about Helen? How's she doing? Better now. She's home. Good. Good. He gestured to the documents Angela had couriered over. Let's make this official. The notarization process was methodical. Signature verification, witness statements, official stamps that made everything real in a way signatures alone couldn't. Each page got its seal, its proof of legitimacy. By late afternoon, I was back in Angela's office. The documents sat on her desk, complete and binding. These documents are active now. Angela pulled up her email program. Do you want Chester informed, or should we wait? Inform him immediately. He's still in Spain. This will end his vacation rather abruptly. Good. He ended Helen's life abruptly. Fair's fair. Angela typed with practice deficiency, attaching the complete trust documentation. Official notification with complete documentation. He'll have everything. Asset lists, beneficiary designation, legal language explaining his removal. Make sure he understands this isn't a threat. It's done. She reviewed the email once, then looked at me. Last chance to change your mind. Send it. Her finger hovered over the button for just a moment, then clicked. The screen showed the sending animation. That little progress bar that felt simultaneously too fast and too slow. Done. Angela closed her laptop. He'll have it within minutes. I sat there watching the afternoon light angle through her office windows and felt something settle inside me. Not peace that would come later, if it came at all, but certainty. The first real move in a game I hadn't chosen to play, but one I'd finish on my terms. Thank you, Angela. Just doing my job. She stood, walked me to the door. Simon, Chester's going to react badly. Be prepared for that. I know. What I didn't say was that I was counting on it. The phone started ringing an hour later. I was home sitting in my study with a glass of water, not whiskey, though. The bottle sat on the shelf where I could see it. Discipline mattered now more than comfort. Chester's name lit up the screen. I watched it ring until voicemail picked up. 30 seconds later, it rang again, then again. 27 calls. I counted every single one. The voicemail started around call 5. His voice progression told the story better than any words could. First message, confusion, seeking clarification. Dad, I got this weird email from your attorney. Call me back. By message 10, anger breaking through. What is this? You can't just give everything away. I'm your son. Message 15. Desperation creeping in. You're making a huge mistake. Stephanie's talking to lawyers. You can't just steal my inheritance. I listened to them all while watching the sunset through my study window. Each message another piece of evidence. Another demonstration of who Chester really was when he didn't get what he wanted. The text came next. Stephanie joined in. Her message is shorter, angrier. You're a cruel old man. That house belongs to Chester. We'll fight this. I set the phone face down on the desk and went to make dinner. Helen came home the next morning. I'd hired Maria, a professional caregiver with 12 years of experience with MS patients. She arrived at 8 carrying a medical bag and an air of competent calm that immediately made the house feel different. "Maria, this is Helen, my wife. She needs medication at 2, 6, and 10. Her chart's on the nightstand. I've worked with MS patients for 12 years, Mr. Watkins. She's in good hands." Helen looked up from the bed, her voice still weak, but clearer than it had been. "Is Chester coming by today?" The question landed in my chest like a weight. "He's been traveling. He'll visit when he can." Maria, read the tension in my non-answer, gave Helen a gentle smile. "Let's get you comfortable, Helen. Can you tell me about your medication schedule?" I left them to it, and went back to the study. The waiting was the hardest part. I knew Chester would come. Emergency flight from Barcelona to Tampa, then the drive down to Sarasota. Expensive, last minute, probably wiping out whatever money he had left. The thought didn't bother me at all. He arrived on the 6th evening, just after 7. I heard the car door slam, then his key in the lock. He still had his key, still had access, but no ownership. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Where are you?" His voice carried through the house. "Dad?" I stood in the living room, positioned carefully so my back was to the hallway, not the wall. Physical space mattered in confrontations. "You're back early. Barcelona not agree with you?" He appeared in the doorway. 10+ hours on a plane showed in every detail. Bloodshot eyes, wrinkled clothes, hair unwashed, and pulled back into a sloppy ponytail. Stephanie followed a step behind, looking uncertain for the first time since I'd met her. "Don't." Chester's voice shook. "Don't you dare joke. What did you do?" "The trust, the foundation, everything to charity. I made arrangements for my estate." "Adults do that." "Your estate?" "That's my inheritance. You can't give it all away." "Actually, I can." I did. I kept my voice level, conversational even. The calm seemed to enrage him more than shouting would have. "This is because of Mom. She's fine. She's home now, right?" "No, thanks to you. You left her to die." "I didn't. It was just a few days. I needed a break." The word break hit something cold in my chest. You needed a break. She needed water, food, her medication, which mattered more. Chester stepped forward, hands gesturing wildly. "Dad, I'm sorry. I'll do better. Just change it back. Please, we can fix this. You lost the right to call me Dad when you posted that picture. Pathetic old folks. Remember?" Stephanie moved up beside him. "He didn't mean it like that." I looked at her directly for the first time since they had arrived. "You told me this house would be yours soon. Did you mean that?" She went quiet. Chester's desperation shifted into something harder. "I'll sue. I'll contest it. You're old. You were on pain medication after surgery. The trust was created 4 days after my surgery. I was fully lucid. 2 attorneys and a notary will testify to that. There has to be something. Undue influence. Coercion. Try it." I sat down in my chair, made him stand while I sat. Another power position, another subtle message. Spend what little money you have left on lawyers. The law is clear. The property is mine to dispose of as I choose. I'm your son. The words came out almost like a wail. "No, you're someone who shares my DNA." A son would have checked on his mother. Chester lunged forward, finger jabbing toward my chest. I didn't move, didn't flinch. Behind me, I heard Maria's voice from Helen's room, concerned and professional. "Mr. Watkins, is everything all right?" I kept my eyes on Chester. "Everything's fine, Maria," I called back. Then, quieter, just for Chester. "You should leave now before you do something you'll regret even more than Barcelona." I woke early the next morning to silence, broken only by Maria's quiet movements in Helen's room. The confrontation with Chester felt like something from another lifetime, though it had been less than 12 hours. I stood in the kitchen, coffee cooling in the cup I'd forgotten to drink, and understood what the silence meant. Chester and Stephanie were still here, still asleep in the guest room. They hadn't left. They weren't going to leave. This was going to be a siege. The next 2 weeks unfolded in a kind of toxic choreography. We avoided each other but shared the same space. Passing in hallways without speaking, hearing each other through walls, we couldn't escape. Chester made phone calls from the guest room, his voice rising and falling in frustration. I'd hear snatches through the thin walls, words like undue influence and diminished capacity and has to be something. One afternoon, I heard a phone hit the wall. Then Chester's voice raw. "Useless all of them." Stephanie played music loudly, left dishes in the sink, tracked mud across floors Helen had kept pristine. Passive-aggressive warfare, the kind that can't quite be called out but grinds on you anyway. I focused on Helen, Spent hours in her room while Maria worked, reading to her from old architectural journals she used to tease me about. Still boring after all these years, she'd say back when she could. Now she'd just lay there, eyes closed, breath shallow. Maria pulled me aside one morning in mid-February. Her vitals are stable, but she's fading. It's not dramatic, just gradual. I had known for days, maybe weeks. The way Helen squeezed my hand had changed. Less strength, more desperation, like she was trying to hold on to something slipping away. Simon, her voice barely a whisper one evening. I'm here, right here, Chester, don't be too hard. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Rest now. Everything's handled. Her fingers tightened weakly around mine. Love you always. Always. Sleep now. She did. For the next 2 weeks, she slept more than she woke. Ate less. Spoke not at all. Maria updated me daily with the clinical details, but I could see it myself. Helen was leaving one breath at a time. March 2nd, early evening. Maria appeared in my study doorway. Simon, now I followed her to Helen's room. The change in breathing, I'd heard about it, but experiencing it was different. Shallow, irregular, like her body had forgotten the rhythm. I sat beside her, took her hand, talked quietly about our life together. The house I'd designed for her, the way she'd always known when I needed coffee. 42 years of small moments that built something larger than either of us alone. She didn't respond. Didn't open her eyes, but her hand stayed in mine. Then, without drama or gasping, the breathing stopped. Just gradual stillness, then silence. Maria checked her pulse, looked at me, shook her head gently. I sat there for an hour, still holding Helen's hand before I called the funeral home. Chester and Stephanie were somewhere in the house. I'd heard the television earlier. I didn't tell them. Not yet. Not until I'd made the arrangements, chosen the casket, handled the details with the calm precision Helen would have expected. The funeral was 4 days later. Small service at a local facility. Just the space, nothing else. 10 people attended, elderly neighbors, a few of Helen's former co-workers, Maria. I delivered a brief eulogy about Helen's strength and grace. Kept it together because falling apart wouldn't honor her. Chester arrived late, stumbling through the door with Stephanie trying to support him. The smell hit me before I saw him. Cologne, failing to mask alcohol. He pushed past me toward the front of the room, grabbed the podium for balance, knocked over a flower arrangement. She was my mother, best woman. His voice broke. I loved her. I approached quietly, put my hand on his elbow. Chester, this isn't the time. Please go. He jerked away. You don't tell me. She's my mother. And you left her to die. Everyone here knows it. Leave with some dignity. You turned her against me. You poisoned. I'm asking once more. Leave now. Mr. Patterson and another neighbor were already moving forward. Come on, son. Let's get you some air. Chester let them lead him out, still protesting. Stephanie followed, not looking at anyone. The service continued. We buried Helen under oak trees she'd admired. I placed a single rose on the casket before they lowered it. The week after felt longer than the 2 weeks before. Chester and Stephanie avoided me more if that was possible. I processed my grief privately, sitting in Helen's empty room, going through photos with methodical care. Young versions of us stared back, full of hope and plans and the kind of naive certainty that life would work out. I placed the photos in a box, closed it, filed it away properly. Then I went to my desk, pulled out Angela Ray's business card, and picked up the phone. Angela answered on the second ring. Simon, I'm so sorry about Helen. I saw the obituary. Thank you. I appreciate that. I paused, looking at the guest room door down the hall. I need your help with something else now. Chester and Stephanie are still living in my house. They won't leave. How long has it been? 3 weeks since the confrontation. A week since Helen's funeral. Papers rustled on her end. Okay. Florida law is clear here. You need to serve them formal notice. 15 days to vacate. After that, if they refuse, we file eviction proceedings. How long until they're physically out of my house? Realistically, if they don't leave after the court orders it, sheriff's removal takes a few days. 6 weeks total from today. 6 weeks. 6 more weeks of footsteps overhead, of hostile silences, of Stephanie's music and Chester's late-night drinking. Then we do it right. Start the paperwork. The notice went out March 11th via certified mail. Milton Willis handled the sending. Everything documented, trackable, official. Chester signed for it on the 12th. I know because I had the tracking number, watched it update online. Delivered, signature required, received. I heard him crumple the notice, throw it across the kitchen. Evict me? Your own flesh and blood? I didn't look up from my newspaper. My flesh and blood left his mother to die. The courts don't care about DNA. Where am I supposed to go? We have no money. You had money for Barcelona. Figure it out. Stephanie tried diplomacy for the first time since Helen's death. Simon, please. We can pay rent. We'll contribute. No, this isn't negotiable. You have until the 26th. I marked the calendar in my study. Each day, a small X, March 14th, 15th, 16th. The house felt like it was holding its breath, waiting. They didn't leave. March 26th came and went. I took photos through my study window. Chester's car in the driveway, lights on in the guest room. Documentation. Mrs. Patterson from next door signed a statement confirming their continued presence. I called Angela the next morning. They're still here. You want to proceed with the lawsuit immediately. I've documented everything. Okay, I'll file tomorrow morning. You'll need to be present for the hearing. I wouldn't miss it. The lawsuit filed March 27th. The hearing got scheduled for April 15th, 19 days away. The legal machinery had started grinding, slow but inexorable. April 1st, a process server appeared at my door. Professional woman, clipboard, and legal papers. Is Chester Watkins present? Guest room down the hall. She knocked. Chester opened the door, shirtless, confused. She handed him the papers. You've been served. Have a nice day. He stood there holding them, reading, face going through stages of disbelief. You're actually suing me. Your own son. You made your choice in Barcelona. I'm making mine now. Mom would be ashamed of you. I finally looked up from the newspaper I'd been pretending to read. Your mother asked me not to be too hard on you, but she also asked you not to leave her alone. We both broke promises. He retreated to the guest room. I heard raised voices, Stephanie's frustrated tone, Chester's defensive responses. April 5th, Angela called. You got countersued. Chester's claiming you were mentally incompetent when you created the trust. I'd been expecting this. Desperation makes people predictable. I was 4 days post-surgery. Knee replacement, local anesthetic, some mild pain medication. Were you impaired during our meeting? You were there, was I? You were sharper than most clients. Her voice carried certainty. We have witnesses. Me, Milton, my paralegal, plus video timestamp from office security showing you lucid and deliberate. So, he can't win. He can try, but this is desperation, not a legitimate legal strategy. It'll fail. Question is whether you want to countersue for frivolous litigation. I considered it. More legal fees for Chester. More pressure, more consequences. Let's see how the eviction hearing goes first. Fair enough. Start gathering every piece of documentation you have. Medical records, pharmacy receipts, anything proving you were clear-headed after surgery. Already done. I had boxes organized by date in my study. Every prescription, every follow-up appointment, every lucid conversation documented in Maria's care notes. Of course you do. Angela actually laughed. Simon, we're going to bury this claim and then we're going to bury him in that eviction hearing. I smiled for the first time in weeks. That's the plan. I stood in my closet the week before the hearing, selecting a suit, navy blue, conservative, respectful. Not for Chester, for the judge. On my desk sat 3 binders, witness statements, medical records, timeline documents. Angela had called my preparation overkill. I'd called it architecture. Every detail mattered when building a case. April 15th arrived with Florida sunshine and the kind of clarity that made everything sharp-edged. The Sarasota County Courthouse smelled like floor polish and anxiety. Angela and I arrived 30 minutes early. Chester and Stephanie showed up 12 minutes late, trailing a young attorney who looked fresh from law school. Judge Martinez was middle-aged, efficient, the kind of person who'd heard every excuse twice. She read through the filings quickly while we waited. Mr. Watkins, you're evicting your son from your home. Can you explain why? I kept my voice level. Your Honor, Chester Watkins abandoned his bedridden mother for a vacation overseas. She nearly died from neglect. He's not my son in any meaningful sense anymore. Chester's attorney stood quickly. Objection. Irrelevant to the eviction proceeding. Overruled. Judge Martinez didn't look up from the documents. It establishes why there's no informal family arrangement. Mr. Watkins has legal right to his property. Angela presented our case like she was building a wall brick by brick. Certified mail receipts. Timeline documentation. No lease agreement. No rent payment history. Chester's attorney tried the hardship angle. Nowhere to go. Family dispute, not legal matter, but it fell flat against the evidence. The ruling took less than 20 minutes. Chester Watkins must vacate the property by May 15, 30 days from today. Chester shot to his feet. "This is my home." Judge Martinez's eyes went cold. "Sir, one more outburst and I'll hold you in contempt. This is my courtroom." He sat down. I remained silent throughout, letting the law speak for itself. The competency hearing came a week later, April 22. Same courthouse, different room, bigger, more formal, higher stakes. Chester's attorney presented their case first. My age, 68. The surgery timing, 4 days post-operation. Pain medication records showing prescriptions filled. Then Angela began dismantling it. Medical records. I had been prescribed only mild over-the-counter pain relievers, not narcotics. The surgeon's affidavit, minor procedure, local anesthetic, no expected cognitive impairment. Security footage from Angela's office building. Timestamp February 12, showing me clearly articulate and purposeful, asking detailed questions, making specific decisions. Milton Willis took the stand next. "Mr. Willis, in your professional opinion, was Simon Watkins competent when signing the trust documents?" "Absolutely." Milton's voice carried decades of authority. "I've notarized thousands of documents." "Mr. Watkins understood every clause, asked specific questions, made deliberate choices, textbook competency." Chester's attorney tried. "But he was 4 days post-surgery. A knee replacement with local anesthetic, not brain surgery. His mind was perfectly clear." Angela testified last, walking the judge through every interaction we'd had, my specific instructions, the questions I'd asked, the legal concepts I'd grasped immediately. Judge Thompson, older than Martinez, more formal, reviewed everything with careful attention, then delivered his ruling. "This court finds no credible evidence of diminished capacity. The medical testimony is clear. Minor procedure, minimal medication, no cognitive impact. The video evidence shows Mr. Watkins articulate and purposeful. Claim dismissed with prejudice. Mr. Chester Watkins is barred from refiling this claim." Chester's head dropped into his hands. I heard a sound, something between a sob and a gasp. Stephanie put her hand on his shoulder. I stood, collected my binder, and walked out without looking back. Early May brought their final desperate move. I'd installed security cameras after Chester moved back in. Just basic doorbell models, but they covered the driveway and mailbox. May 1st, I went grocery shopping. When I returned, Mrs. Patterson flagged me down. "Simon, I saw Stephanie at your mailbox earlier. Looked like she was going through your mail." I thanked her, went inside, and pulled up the security footage. There it was. Stephanie watching my car leave, walking to the mailbox, sorting through envelopes, looking over her shoulder repeatedly. May 3rd, I called the police non-emergency line. 2 officers arrived that afternoon. I showed them the footage, explained the situation. They interviewed Stephanie while Chester was out, apparently at a job interview, though I doubted that would lead anywhere. "Ma'am, why were you going through this mailbox?" Stephanie's voice wavered. "I was checking if my mail had arrived. I'm staying here temporarily." "Do you have legal residence here?" "Chester lives here." "I'm with Chester. Mr. Watkins says Chester is being evicted. You're not supposed to touch this mail." "Clear." "Yes." "Clear." The officers wrote up a report. Federal mail interference. 18 U.S.C. made RE 8. Not enough for criminal charges, but enough for an official record. They warned Stephanie not to touch the mailbox again. I filed the police report in my binder with everything else. The days crawled toward May 15th. The house atmosphere had moved beyond toxic into something else. Defeated acceptance. Chester stayed in the guest room mostly barely speaking. Stephanie packed systematically, reality settling in. May 10th, a small moving truck appeared in the driveway. I watched from my study window as they loaded boxes and furniture. Chester's furniture now, I suppose. Whatever he'd bought over the years. They were careful not to take anything that had been Helen's. The day after Chester moved out, I sat in my study with a private investigator's report. I'd commissioned it back in April during the court battles. $800, money well spent for information Chester never knew I was gathering. The report was thorough. Chester and Stephanie's new address. A 1-bedroom apartment in Northport, 30 miles south. Cheap area. Monthly rent, $1,100. Stephanie's new job, retail at a department store, $13 an hour. Chester's employment status, unemployed, job hunting. There was more. The house I'd given Chester 5 years ago, the one he'd lost to a property owner named Herman Olson in a poker game. The PI had tracked that down, too. Herman Olson, 53, professional gambler, owned 6 rental properties across Bradenton, lived at 847 Palm Avenue. I had spent the week planning. Now May 20th, I drove north toward Bradenton. Herman's house was nice. 2-story Mediterranean style, well-maintained yard, expensive cars in the driveway. The kind of home that came from successful business, whether legal or not. He answered the door himself. Big man, solid, with the kind of handshake that meant something. Mr. Olson, I'm Simon Watkins. I believe you won a house for my son in a poker game. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. Come in. His living room was comfortable, professional. I noticed the poker table visible through an archway. Green felt, good lighting. This was where Chester had bet everything on nothing. Your son's a terrible poker player, Herman said, pouring coffee I hadn't asked for. Worst I've seen. He's terrible at a lot of things. Poker's just one of them. Herman smiled slightly. I'm guessing you're not here for sympathy. I'm here to buy the house back. It's not for sale. Good property, decent rental income. I pulled out the deed from my briefcase. When I gave that house to Chester 5 years ago, there was a deed restriction. No transfers for 10 years without my consent. Herman's expression shifted. I didn't see any restriction. My attorney checked, check again. Section 4, Clause B. It's recorded with Manatee County Public Record since 2020. He took the document, read carefully, his jaw tightened. This says, you're saying the transfer isn't valid. I'm saying you're holding property you don't legally own, which makes this conversation very important for you. Silent stretch between us. I watched him calculate the way good poker players do. If what you're saying is true, why offer to buy it? Just take it back through court. I could, but litigation takes time, costs money. I'm offering you a clean exit. $320,000. You walk away whole. I paid more than that. Chester's debt was $360 plus. Chester's debt isn't my problem. Current market value is $340,000. I'm offering $320,000. That's $20,000 under value. Take it or risk losing everything in court. He leaned back, studying me with new respect. You've got steel, old man. All right. $320,000. 2A closing. I'll have my attorney draw up the papers. We shook hands again. This time it felt different. Two men who understood the game, even if we'd been on opposite sides. He said this house was his future, Herman said as he walked me to the door. Bet it all on a pair of 8s. That sounds like Chester betting everything on nothing. You're cleaning up his mess. That's rough. I'm done cleaning up after him. This is the last one. I drove back to Sarasota with the windows down. Warm May air filling the car. Herman would have his attorney contact Angela by end of week. 2 weeks after that, I'd own both houses, the one I'd built and the one I'd foolishly given away. Chester was in Northport, working retail if he'd found anything at all, living in a 1-bedroom with a girlfriend who was already looking for the exits. The PI report had included a detail I hadn't expected. Stephanie on her phone outside their apartment, voice raised, saying, I can't do this forever. Chester had no idea what I'd just done. No idea I'd recovered what he'd lost. And he wouldn't know until I decided to tell him, if I decided to tell him at all. That uncertainty, that was its own kind of justice. The closing attorney's office in Bradenton had that polished, professional atmosphere where serious transactions happened. May 31st. Herman Olson sat across from me. Both of us flanked by attorneys. Documents slid across the mahogany table. Deed transfer, wire confirmation, keys on a small ring. $320,000 changed hands electronically. Numbers on a screen. Wealth redistributed with keystrokes. Herman signed the final page, pushed it toward the notary, then looked at me with something that might have been respect. You know, I actually feel bad for your son losing this place the way he did. Don't. He didn't lose it. He threw it away. There's a difference. Fair enough. Herman stood, offered his hand. You played this smart, clean. Wish more people handled things like this. I shook his hand firmly. I'm not handling things. I'm correcting mistakes. His and mine. The mistake of giving him too much. The mistake of thinking he'd earned it. I drove back to Sarasota with 2 sets of keys, 2 property deeds. At home, I placed both deeds in my safe side by side. One house I'd built with my own hands. One house I'd given away foolishly and now recovered. Combined value, over $1 million. Chester had no idea. That ignorance was about to become useful. June 5th, I met with Angela in her office. One more legal action, final psychological strike. She pulled up Florida statutes on her computer. Tell me what you're thinking. Filial Responsibility Statute 742.031. Adult children financially responsible for parents' medical care under certain circumstances. Angela leaned back studying me. Simon, this claim is weak. Florida filial responsibility is rarely enforced. Judges don't like it. You paid for Helen's care voluntarily. Hard to prove necessity under the statute. You likely can't win this. I don't need to win. I need him to think he could lose. Understanding crossed her face. You're weaponizing the legal system for psychological warfare. I'm using every tool available, just like Chester used my trust when he abandoned his mother. She drafted the letter over the next hour. $47,000 in medical costs. Nurse Maria's wages, medications, medical equipment, doctor visits, every receipt I'd saved, every invoice itemized in legal language. Failure to respond within 30 days will result in filing lawsuit in Sarasota County Court. I reviewed the draft 3 times, made edits to strengthen the threatening tone, watched Angela seal the envelope, affixed the certified mail label. The letter arrived at Chester's Northport apartment on June 6. I didn't need to be there to know what happened next. Mrs. Patterson's nephew, the landlord, reported the highlights. Chester received the certified letter, had to sign for it, opened it with Stephanie present. First paragraph informed him I'd repossessed the house he'd lost to Herman Olson. Second paragraph demanded $47,000 for Helen's medical care under filial responsibility statute. According to the landlord's account, Chester made frantic phone calls, legal aid hotlines, free consultation services. The responses he got were variations of the same theme. The statute exists. Application is complicated. Depends on circumstances. You need representation. Representation. He couldn't afford. Which meant he couldn't afford to ignore the claim. Stephanie's response is reported, I can't do this anymore. This is your family, your mess. June 10, late afternoon. I was in my study when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Chester on my porch, thinner, disheveled, exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. I opened the door. He stood there, hands fidgeting, shoulders hunched. Dad, please, can we talk? Please. I stepped aside, let him enter. We stood in the living room. I didn't offer him a seat. Dad, I know I messed up badly, but I'm trying. I'm working. You're working because you have no choice, not because you've changed. That's not fair. You don't know. I know exactly who you are. You showed me in Barcelona. You showed me every day your mother needed you and you weren't there. His voice cracked. She forgave me. Before she died, she said, she asked me not to be too hard on you. I'm not being hard. I'm being just. What do you want from me? Tell me what to do and I'll do it. I'll work forever to pay you back. I let the silence stretch, watched him squirm, then spoke with the kind of finality that closes doors permanently. When you left your mother dying to take a vacation, you made your choice. I've made mine. The house you lost, I own it now. The debt I'm claiming, that's your burden to carry, even if it's only in your mind. So, this is it? You're just done with me? I was done with you the moment I saw that post from Barcelona. This is just paperwork. You're my father and Helen was your mother. You remember what you did to her? Live with that. I have too. I walked to the door, opened it. Chester stood there another moment, then left. I watched him drive away in a car that probably should have been in a junkyard years ago. The following week brought news through Mrs. Patterson's nephew. Stephanie moved out June 12. Chester was alone now, barely making rent. He'd found work, Amazon delivery driver, $16 an hour. I sat at my desk, drafted an email to Angela. Withdraw the filial responsibility claim. I'd never intended to follow through. The weapon was the threat itself, not the action. Chester would spend months, maybe years, waiting for a lawsuit that would never come. That uncertainty, that fear, that was the point. Early July, I listed both properties for sale. The house I'd built sold in 11 days for $675,000. The recovered house took 3 weeks, sold for $335,000. Over $1 million in transactions, handled with the same precision I'd brought to architectural projects decades ago. I bought a modest condo in a senior community overlooking Sarasota Bay. 2 bedrooms, clean lines, more space than I needed. Cost me $245,000, left $765,000 from the property sales. Combined with my savings, $520,000 still sitting in accounts, I had $1.285 million, almost exactly what the estate had been worth before I transferred it to the MS Foundation. Angela helped me establish the Helen Watkins Memorial Foundation. Proper 501c3 incorporation, Board of Directors, mission statement focused on providing in-home nursing assistance for families dealing with MIS. The paperwork took 6 weeks. By mid-August, everything was official. August 15th, we held a small ceremony. 40 people in a downtown conference room, neighbors, Helen's former co-workers, Maria, representatives from local MS support groups. The Sarasota Herald-Tribune Center reporter. I gave a brief speech about Helen's strength, her grace through difficulty, her belief that people should help each other, announced the foundation would distribute grants starting immediately, $15,000 each, to qualifying families who needed in-home nursing support. The first grants went out that week, 3 families, $45,000 enabling care that meant the difference between managing at home and institutional placement. Mrs. Patterson posted photos from the ceremony on Facebook, tagged me, tagged the foundation, added details about Helen's story, the devoted wife, the difficult illness, the husband who'd honored her memory by helping others. Chester saw it. According to the landlord, saw the ceremony photos, the grant announcements, the foundation bearing his mother's name, funded by the estate he'd expected to inherit. He didn't call, didn't show up, just saw it on a screen, absorbed the final accounting of what his choices had cost him. August 1st, Stephanie filed for divorce in Florida. No fault, no assets to divide, quick dissolution. 2 weeks later, it was final. Chester signed the papers without contest. He had nothing left to fight for, nothing left to fight with. I spent my days at the condo volunteering with the foundation's administrative work, grant applications, family interviews, coordination with nursing agencies. Turned out the skills I developed managing architectural projects translated well to managing charitable operations. Late August evening, I sat on my condo balcony, watching the sun set over Sarasota Bay. Coffee cooling in my cup, herb garden thriving in small pots along the railing. Simple pleasures, sufficient pleasures. Helen's photo sat on the side table. Our wedding day, young and hopeful. I looked at it, then looked at the bay, the expansive water reflecting orange and gold. The foundation would continue after I was gone. Board members committed, funding secure, mission clear. Helen's name would help families for decades. That mattered more than any revenge. Chester was in Northport working a delivery route, living in a 1-bedroom apartment alone. He'd lost his inheritance, his house, his wife, his father. He'd gained exactly what his choices had earned him, isolation and consequence. I'd achieved what I'd set out to achieve, justice, not vengeance, punishment proportional to harm. Helen honored, not through bitterness, but through purpose. The sun touched the horizon. Light spreading across the water in patterns that seemed deliberate but were just physics and circumstance. Like justice perhaps. Natural law playing out over time. I wasn't happy. Helen was still gone. That wound would never fully heal. But I was at peace. The books balanced. The architecture of consequence properly constructed. Chester living with his choices. Helen's memory living in meaningful action. I finished my coffee, stood, brought the cup inside. Tomorrow, I'd review grant applications. Next week, visit families who'd received assistance, build something positive from the wreckage Chester had created. The difference between us, I'd realized over these months, wasn't intelligence or opportunity. It was understanding that actions have weight, that choices echo forward, that family means more than blood. It means showing up when someone needs you. Even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. Chester never learned that. Maybe never could. I'd stopped trying to teach him. Now I just lived the lesson myself, helping families who understood what he never would. That caring for someone isn't a burden. It's a privilege. And when you fail at it, you lose more than money or property. You lose the right to call yourself family. The bay darkened as night settled in. I stood at my window, looking out at water and sky and the lights of a city where I'd spent my life building things. Buildings, relationships, a reputation. Now, a foundation that would outlive me. Chester was out there somewhere in the darkness, delivering packages to strangers' doors, counting pennies, sleeping in a cheap apartment with walls thin enough to hear neighbors' lives continuing around him, alone with his choices. I turned from the window, closed the blinds, and went to bed. Tomorrow would bring more grant applications, more families needing help. More opportunities to transform Helen's suffering into someone else's relief. That transformation, tragedy into purpose, pain into help. That was the architecture I'd been building all along. And unlike Chester, I'd built it to last.